Hey friends, so I'm going to get to the conclusion of this out of the way at the start. There will not be a Poi Top 10 list this year. In fact, I think that I'm calling it on this project in general. But to understand why, I'm going to do one of my patented walk and talks here, so come along with me while I go get in some dance practice here, yeah? Drex here from Drex Factor Poi, sharing with you the love of poi spinning and flow arts to benefit your body and brain. And today we're talking about one of those things that I've done to share my love of poi spinning over the years that I think has run its course. But before we dive in, I just want to give a quick shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thanks to Dark Monk, Fire Mecca, Flow Fests, Flow Toys, Juggling Calling, Pyroterror Light Toys, Spinballs, and Ultra Poi for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can learn more about all these amazing businesses and what they're doing to support flow artists like yourself by checking out the links that I've got down in the description of this video. And special thanks to non-business friends of the channel, Johnny Howard, Lane Machinsky, and Becca Bekkonen. Thank you all so very much for your support for my work and my mission. So I think it's officially safe to say that winter has come to DC. We saw the temperatures drop down into the 30s this past week. Shall we say, I am not good about handling the colds. But still, so I recently got back from a trip to Salt Lake City, and one of those things that kind of came out of that trip for me was realizing just how important it is to me to get in like a lot of physical activity. So I'm trying to get out and do some dance today. I sometimes allow myself to get so wrapped up in writing or editing that I miss out on this. And goodness knows it's not exactly easy when the weather is this frightful, but I'm gonna try and do it nonetheless today. Okay, so the Poi Top 10 list. It started up in 2012. And originally, it was me looking at the work of a British juggler by the name of Luke Burridge. I thought his idea of like a top 40 jugglers list was pretty cool, and I noticed that a couple poi spinners were talking about trying to get a spot on this. And in my mind, it seemed kind of silly for us to be asking for a ticket to somebody else's party. So I figured, hey, what if I create my own? And even right away, there was a lot of controversy around this. A lot of people told me that they believed that creating that list was damaging the community in many ways by essentially creating another way by which people could puff up their egos, and also, too, that it seemed rather telling that the list was consistently dominated by cis-het white guys from the United States. And not gonna lie, a lot of them actually had a point. You know, just in terms of community impact over the years, I started getting some really disturbing reports that some of the people who wound up on the list would then sometimes turn around and use that notoriety to kind of be really unpleasant to others. I remember hearing of one incident in particular where somebody who made it on the top 10 list got really drunk at a festival, and when the staff there tried to get him to calm down, he blew up at them with the statement, "Do you know who I am?" Which, anytime that's coming out of somebody's mouth, something has definitely gone wrong. I also heard at least one story of somebody who made the list kind of being bullied for it, with, you know, people they encountered being like, "Oh, so you think you're hot stuff now, right?" I really wanted to, for many years, believe that there were still a lot of positives that would come out of it in terms of just like charting the evolution of the art form over the years. And so there were times when I admit I tried really hard to kind of to convince myself that those positives outweighed the negatives and not pay as much attention to them, probably both to the detriment of myself as well as to others. And you know, it has to be said on my end of things that doing that list every year was actually really, really stressful for me. You know, not just because of the reaction that it would engender from people, but also because, like, I had to compile a whole bunch of footage. I had to count up the votes. this process took quite a long time, and it always meant that like the end of the year was a really stressful time for me when I was struggling to get all this done. There were many times when, you know, people would ask or demand that I add more spots to the list to include more spinners. And I'd be like, look, if I do that, it's gonna take me twice as long to edit this video. So it's either I get help or like, y'all stop making these demands of me. And more often than not, the response I got from that was not, oh, I will help you. It was, well, I think that you should change your editing process to so that I don't have to help you out, which, yeah, that was not terribly helpful on a lot of levels. And you know, a lot of this culminated in a year where there were some people that made the list that that got recognized on it, that have made people in our community feel very, very, very uncomfortable in the community. And that was kind of my wake-up call that it was time to switch gears, and it was time to try to make the list be more than just like, who are the American white dudes who everybody's been watching this year. And I'm really proud of what came out of that, honestly. The year that I created that committee and I like basically treated it like an award show, I think that that is the finest top 10 list that I have ever done. And it was also by an enormous margin the most work. I had to work around a lot of people's schedules, and you know, it was really stressful getting the acceptance speeches from people. I gave people like 48 hours to do that in, and I cannot believe that I managed to get one from everybody. It was a great video, but like that process was just not sustainable. So I'll be real with you. The next year, when interest around it kind of ebbed a little bit and I didn't get as many submissions for nominations, I wasn't actually very disappointed in that. You know, sure, I think that it is good for us to recognize people that accomplish a lot in the community. I think that it's good for us to be able to track how the community evolves over time. And also too, just to be able to tell people, hey, you know, the stuff that you did had an impact on me and it was awesome. If for no other reason than I think a lot of people just don't actually know how big an impact they can have. And it's always good to be able to show people that their actions can sometimes have a bigger footprint in the world than they think it does. But at the same time, like, yeah, it really was kind of nice going through the holidays without having the top 10 list hanging over my head. It was kind of nice not to have to juggle a bunch of schedules. It was kind of nice not to spend the holidays on my laptop editing together this gigantic compilation video. It's kind of nice to actually just get to enjoy that period leading up to the new year. It had been nearly a decade since I'd been able to do that. And it was kind of nice. So every single November for the past 11 years, I've sat myself down to think, okay, do I really want to do this to myself again? And, you know, in a lot of cases, I'd have people that would be asking me about it, that would be like hitting me up and be like, hey, you're going to do the top 10 again this year. Hey, you're going to do the top 10 again this year. And that would put me in a place of thinking, well, okay, I guess this actually means something to people. Maybe I should. And that's notably tapered off a lot in the past couple years. And without that kind of enthusiasm coming in, I'm realizing that, you know, my natural state is kind of just to say, nah, I just want to kind of enjoy the holidays, you know? So I have actually known now for several months that I wasn't going to come back and do the top 10 list. And, you know, I tried making a video about this once before, actually, and I got really, really into the weeds on a different topic that I will probably make a video about at some point, but that doesn't really belong in this video. So, yeah, the Poi Top 10 video, it's a project that I did for a decade. and that I think ran its course. And now I'm ready to move on and do something else with my life. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that feel a lot of nostalgia for that project, that, you know, are going to be angry with me for abandoning it and telling me that, like, my not doing it again is somehow failing to support the broader community or give people access to my platform. And I mean, they're free to that opinion. They've never helped me out with the editing. They've never helped me out with trying to navigate all this stuff. So, you know, hey, if you want to see it happen, you can be the one to do it, right? And I think it does also need to be inserted here too that, you know, one of the big things that went wrong with that list over the years, and that I think a lot of people watching it considered to be a feature rather than a bug, was that really it just became a list of people who all looked and spun very much like each other. You know, it's hard to miss the fact that, like, I've had a conversation with several people in the past year about how very frequently our idea of what makes great literature is actually just a bunch of old white dudes sitting around talking about stuff written by other old white dudes because it speaks to them and their experiences. And I think to a certain extent, the Poi Top 10 list became that. It became this way of a bunch of young dudes in the Poi world reflecting themselves back at themselves and telling them that this was great. And I feel bad that that is part of the legacy of having worked on this project, because it wasn't what I wanted to do when I started out. And you know, I should have paid more attention. I should have listened to more people as it was going on. And that's on me. And I'm sorry. And, you know, it is absolutely inevitable. I fully grok that by not doing the top 10 list, by announcing that I'm not doing it and I will never do it again, that it means that almost certainly somebody else is going to try and step in and create their own version of it. And they're going to have to deal with that pitfall. And I guarantee you, there's a very, very, very good chance that the person that does that will likewise view it as a feature instead of a bug, that it tends to be a space in which young dudes in the community reflect themselves back at themselves and think that that then implies greatness. Or it could be that somebody else comes along who just cracks the code in a way that I never could. And you know what? I will be first in line to congratulate them if that does happen. So if you feel like you're up to the challenge, I invite you to do it. And for my part, I eagerly look forward to having a stress-free holiday. That's going to be amazing. I'll probably still do something to cap off the year. We'll see what it looks like, but I can tell you it won't be a list of top 10 poi spinners. And I think that that is for the best, both for me as well as for this community. So, Poi Top 10 list. RIP, y'all. Have a good one, and see you on Wednesday for a new video, yeah? This here video would not be possible if not for the wonderful support of all of these nice people right here. These are my Flow patrons on Patreon. They and the people listed down in the description help to make this video and all the videos on this channel possible. Thank you, one and all, so very much for your amazing support. If you're out there watching and you'd like to support this work that I'm doing, bringing poi spinning and flow arts to the wider world and helping people connect with their brains and their bodies, you can do that by heading on over to patreon.com/DirectsFactorPoi and signing up. There you can get access to a whole bunch of awesome rewards as well as helping me out in that mission. So go please check that out. Thank you in advance. And if you'd like to see more of my vlogs, I will include a link to a playlist of them down in the description as well as up here on screen if you are watching on YouTube. Also, the YouTube algorithm thinks that you'll like this top video right here, so maybe give that a look-see as well. I'm gonna try and go dance now. It is like, what, 30 degrees out and windy, so we'll see how long I last. But keep your fingers crossed for me there, friends. And yeah, as it stands, I am looking at shooting a video of some dance stuff that I've been doing real soon. So be on the lookout for that. I hope that I hope that it comes out okay with the weather as it is. Anyway, have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Peace.